All right, I think attendance has stabilized out online. So welcome back to everyone. If you've been attending this event series, these are the series of talks from us about industry careers and useful things you need to know about them. The talk today, if you've been to it in the past, used to be called The Organization of Business. We're trying out a new fun title this year, but still similar information, taking you through a lot of the language and sort of like hidden details of how businesses run that you don't learn in scientific training, but is really, really good to know if you're applying for industry jobs. So with that, I'm turning it over to Brad and take it away.
Thank you, Emily. And she pretty much gave my entire introduction here. So, and I just will say this presentation was developed about 7 or 8 years ago and developed because in follow-up meetings with some of the fellows after interviews, they would talk about things that they didn't understand, corporate functions, corporate jobs, terminology that's used in business. And for those of us that grew up in business, it's pretty much second nature. But if you spent your life in academia, it's probably all new to you. Okay. So as we said, this is really designed to give you some basic understanding of company structures, titles, and terminology, particularly that used outside of R&D, so that it will help facilitate conversations with people in industry. Now, before we begin, let me give you some kind of a snapshot of what the biosciences industry looks like. Oh, I see. I'd be on the slide.
Okay.
This is the employment metrics. This tells two stories. Number one, you see where it is in the fourth quarter of 25 versus where it was in 22. And while that's not good, 20, 21, and 22 were just hyper hiring environments. We have now stabilized at an area at a level about where we were in 2019. And the good news about that was to date, that had been the highest industry hiring yet. So we are there. The other thing that you see is you see only a very slight drop off in the fourth quarter of 25 versus the third quarter. And if you look back at several years before, you see some pretty significant drops in the fourth quarter. So the people that know that look at these things are saying that is a good sign. And I think they're looking for increased hiring as we get into 26. Yes.
Sorry, so when you say postings, are those just job listings or actual hired positions?
These are postings.
Okay.
Yeah, these are postings. So these aren't the hiring. This is the metric they use for to look at what hiring is.
Gotcha.
Yes. Yeah. All right. And this is a kind of good news, bad news story too. You see this is company layoffs or companies that have announced layoffs. In the fourth quarter, that number has dropped significantly. The bad news part of this is that 25 was the highest number of companies announcing layoffs yet. This one, again, they're looking at the fourth quarter and saying that as we get to 26 and even into 27, they think the layoffs are going to stabilize. Here's some looking at venture capital rounds in the looking back to 22. The red line is the number of rounds. So you see it was just over 100, down somewhat from 24. But what you see is that the amount in those venture rounds, 16.5 billion, up from 2024. So even though there were less rounds, they were bigger. Again, looking at a positive trend there. And IPOs down significantly. And again, kind of a twofold story here. The first quarter of 25 started out like gangbusters and then IPOs. And I should I should clarify that that's initial public offerings, companies that are going public. It started out like a house afire in the first quarter and then dropped off to almost nothing. It again picked up in the fourth quarter. Again, a sign that they're saying that that could be better for 2026. And finally, mergers and acquisitions. This is a good news story. You can see 22, 23, 24 drop just routinely after a really high point in 21, but again, picking up and just under 140 billion US dollars in the mergers and acquisitions. And again, I should say now we're looking at the first quarter of 26, and the numbers are staying very high. So very positive trend here. So both from a hiring standpoint and from a money standpoint, things are looking good as we move into 2026. And one final thing before we get into the topics, you're probably looking at this because you're interested in looking at a job in industry, and just a little bit on what do you look at when you look at a job ad and what don't you look at when you look at the job ad. Now, this is a shortened version of one, but what you can see here is in the responsibilities and the qualifications or skills. Those are the things you want to look for. So if you have experience in those responsibilities of the job, if you have skills in those areas that are qualifications, those are the jobs you want to look for. And I always say, pay no attention to the job title. There is just no consistency in the industry on what they call these titles. And in fact, when we look at some of the job titles that you may be looking at, you'll see there's about a half a dozen different things that they're called. So look at the responsibilities, look at the skills, don't pay any attention to the job title. So what will we cover today? We'll cover functions within all businesses, and then how do companies organize in order to perform those functions, and what are some of the roles and job titles within R&D, and then we'll look at key tools and business terms that are used in companies, particularly in areas beyond R&D. And I can tell you that when we go through this, we'll have a series of questions. You'll be identifying some of these terms. And because of that, I'm authorized to present an MBA to those of you who are attending. So in order to succeed, any company needs to do these four things. They need to create their product. They need to make their product. They need to be able to sell their product, and they need to be able to account for the cash coming in and going out. Now, this is any business from the neighborhood lemonade stand that you may have set up as a kid. You need to create the thing. You need to decide what it is you're going to sell. Are you going to sell lemonade, or are you going to sell something else that may be good in that neighborhood? Then you need to make it. You need to get the pitcher out. You need the water, the mix. You need to stir it up. Then you need to sell it, your little table out front where all the cars go by. And you need to account for the cash. That's the cigar box. You need to take in the money. And if you're a real good negotiator, you may get your mom to donate that stuff so you don't have the cash going out. Now, like I said, this is any business from that neighborhood lemonade stand to the Googles and the Apples and the General Motors. They all have to do those four things. Now we know create the product and the service. We know that is research and development. Making it, that's operations. Selling it, that's commercial. And finally, we have finance in order to account for that. Now, in order to do these four things, companies have to organize their people into groups so that they can functionally carry out these tasks. And so they look at the They look at this and they say, well, we need to expand that because research and development is research. Then you have to develop it, get it ready for the market. Regulatory, that's the product approval. Then you have to make it, and you have to assure that the quality is there to meet the standards that are set in the marketplace. Commercial, you need to market it, you need to create the strategy, then the product promotion, that's sales, and business development, moving products in and out to match your portfolio. And then finally, you need to account for it. That's the revenue and the payment obligations. Finance is the fiscal planning, looking forward several years as to what the money is going to look like. And usually they put the HR, IT, and legal functions, they usually lump that into finance. And so, like I said, you need to organize them so that you can carry out these things. Normally, this is what would be called a functional organization. Executive management with the research development, operations, commercial, and finance that reports into that executive position. Now and then as you see, what we've talked about before, each of these headers comes in, and those kinds of things happen under those organizations. Now, there's different ways that you can organize. This would be what was called a flat organization, where you have all of the groups reporting into an executive management function. This would be what would be common in a smaller company. And that's because some of these smaller companies wouldn't have all of those functions there, so it may be just some of them. As the company grows, they would have to go into what is called a hierarchical organization. So you establish levels of management within the corporation. So you see within R&D, you have the research, the development, and the regulatory reporting into there, and then to the executive management. And each function, you see the way that works. Now, there's no such thing as a perfect organization. Each of these organizations has advantages and they have disadvantages. The advantages of this hierarchical organization is that it promotes functional effectiveness and efficiency, and it encourages effective supervisor-subordinate relationships. Now, some disadvantages. It inhibits cross-functional communication and collaboration, and it can result in functional power centers or fiefdoms. So when this occurs, sometimes companies will go to an alternative structure, and that would be a matrix structure. And that's where you have certain organizations and certain individuals that actually report into multiple places in the organization. So a place where this is common is where you have your regulatory and your quality assurance reporting into both R&D and operations, because it is useful in both areas. Another area where this takes place is business development. Sometimes that could report into R&D and at the same time into the commercial. And that depends on what the state of the products are that you're trying to either divest or bring in. So if they are in a research or development phase, it would make sense to report into the R&D. If they are ready for the market, then commercial. And again, no perfect one, but there are benefits and disadvantages in this as well. This promotes the cross-functional collaboration and communication, and it supports effective project management initiatives. So companies that are going through project management, sometimes change management initiatives, will go to a matrix kind of structure. But there are some disadvantages. It can create functional inefficiencies. So if you have people reporting into both areas, neither one of them, it can inhibit that functional efficiency. And it results sometimes in difficulty in individual performance management. So we'll look at some job titles. We talked about the executive function, often called the chief executive officer, sometimes called the president. And these areas, the chief scientific officer, or sometimes vice president of R&D. And there could be a senior in front of that, senior vice president here, vice president of operations, a chief commercial officer, or a vice president of marketing and sales, and a chief financial officer, or a vice president of finance. And you see they would have, in the larger organizations, they would have their VPs of each of the areas that would be reporting into that. And, I should have said back as we started talking about these organizational charts, these are based on what is called span of control. What is the maximum number of people that one person can effectively manage? Depending on the industry, it will vary somewhat, but it's usually between 8 and 12 people is that span of control. And once your organization gets bigger than that, then you have to look at some of these alternate structures. So we looked at the chief. And I should say, if you look before, each of the functions except operations had a chief chief finance officer, chief commercial officer, but operations didn't. And the reason for that is because that chief operating position takes on a little bit different meaning. So sometimes you will have a chief operating officer reporting to the CEO, and then you will have R&D, manufacturing, and marketing and sales reporting into that one. Normally, when this kind of organization is used, the chief financial officer, the finance function, still reports into the CEO. This is used pretty commonly when a company is in the process of trying to raise money. So the CEO is often away trying to raise money, and the organization then is run by this chief commercial or chief operating officer. Now in the R&D functions, which you may be familiar with how they work. In research, you see the roles and responsibilities: conducting discovery research and team participation in management. Target identification, target validation, assay development, new chemical entity development. Those are all the things that you probably do here at NIH. When you get to preclinical, these are characterizing the candidates, evaluating and selecting the most promising ones, and conducting the preclinical studies. And then you can see the career tracks, which is metabolism, pharmacokinetics, tox, pharmacology, translational research, those kinds of things. And then the clinical development, a little bit different. These are the guys that design and monitor the clinical trials. They provide the oversight, and they do data verification and regulatory oversight. And you see the career tracks: program management, clinical research associates, coordinators. Now, in here, you may see a director of research, and then each specific lab would have a lab manager. And so the director would be over a group of labs, and then each lab would have a manager. And the positions, and as you said, these are positions you may have seen. senior scientist, staff scientist, scientist 1, 2, 3, research associate, research fellow, and there's probably another half a dozen names that are used. This is why I say, look at the job responsibilities, don't look at the title. And in here, you have it similar. You would have a director over a group of labs, a manager, and the same sort of positions that are working in the labs. And then when we get to the clinical trial, it's a little bit different. We generally have a director who is involved in the design of the trial. And then you have the monitors, the program managers, clinical research scientists, clinical research associate, and the contract administrators.
Relevant question in the chat, is the organizational structure different for CROs, contract research organizations, or does it look similar to them as well?
It would be similar to them. Can I go back here?
Mhm.
Yeah, it would be similar to them, only they wouldn't have the commercial functions and some of the other things. Most of their organization would be like this. Yep. And one more level that we need to bring out, we have the CEO and there are chief officers there. And that is the board of directors in a company. And these are made up of 3 to up to 15 business executives, and 3 would be in a small company. I believe General Motors has 15 of them. And there's 2 types. There's the independent director, and those are people that come from out there that are outside the company. And then you have the internal directors, which would be company management. Normally that would be either the CEO and or the CFO. And their role is oversight of proper financial and reporting responsibilities.
Are investors usually in this group as well?
The investors wouldn't be in here. These are the people that put together the reports for the investors.
Okay.
And now we go to some of the key terms. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some key terms in each of these areas, and I want you to help me define them. So for those of you online, you can either unmute yourself and give us the answer, or type it in. We'll have Emily will be watching on this. So here we go from operations, and we're going to start with one that hopefully you know, and that's SOP.
Standard operating procedure.
Standard operating procedures. There we go. All right. And now how about I didn't want to put the answer up there. GLP.
Good laboratory practice.
Oh, very good.
I don't know how I came up with that one.
All right, but here's the question. Who determines what GLP is? Does anybody online know this?
Let's see, good manufacturing practices. The response is to who makes it.
Okay. Okay, this is a group called CLIA, the Clinical Laboratory Improvement Amendment is what that stands for. And that is an organization that defines what good laboratory practices are.
Are they independent of OSHA?
It is a government organization independent from OSHA. Yes. Yes. Okay, now how about GMP?
Gross manufacturing practices. I think someone in the chat said that right
Yeah.
already. So,
Practices, good manufacturing.
Are good.
Okay,
Yeah.
we got some on there. That's good. All right. And here's the question. Who determines what GMP is?
I gave the answer away. All right.
What's that?
I gave the answer away.
What is it?
Is it OSHA?
No,
Oh, it's not.
No.
Oh, never mind.
no, no.
FDA.
The FDA.
Oh, okay.
That is correct. Yeah, the FDA determines what good manufacturing processes are. And these are all written out. So when a product is coming through development, that has to be assured that that has to be developed under GLP and manufactured under GMP conditions. Okay, how about SKU? This
Keeping
is-
units, stock keeping units.
Now we're getting outside the lab a little bit.
Stock keeping units.
Component type.
Okay, yeah. very good.
The thing about
Stop.
typing, it's not as fast as yelling out answers.
Mhm.
You get a speed boost here.
Yeah.
If you're online, you also can't unmute yourself as well. You are welcome to do that.
Oh, yeah, we want you to do that and yell out the answer. All right, we have anybody in there?
Not yet. Someone was speaking. I didn't hear them. Stock keeping unit.
Yeah, okay, there we go. Yep. A stock keeping unit, or sometimes called a shelf keeping unit. And this is how each product within each product within a company is accounted for. Right? And if you go to your grocery store, that's the little barcode. That's
Right.
that
Yeah.
keeps track of the stock keeping unit. Yep. How about pilot plant? This is a bioscience one.
I should know this, but I'm not 100%. So
Someone said a prototype,
Oh, good.
small scale production.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. This is a facility established to manufacture limited quantities, generally used for clinical trial stage
Right.
products. Yep. Okay, now some of the finance ones. These are the ones you knew. Now we get into the hard ones. Okay, so first of all, there's a series of reports. And there's a series of about 4 reports that all companies have to do. Now, because finance people take this to the extreme, there's usually about 140 reports but they all do the same 4 things. And first is the balance sheet. And that looks at what are the company's assets, what does the company own, what are the liabilities, what does the company owe, and then shareholder equity. And the difference is a very simple formula. So assets equals liabilities plus shareholder equity. So you take the liabilities, you subtract them from the assets. That's what the owners have. That is the so-called value of the company. Then there's the income statement, and that measures the profitability. It's also sometimes called the profit and loss. So it looks at revenues and gains. So that is revenues and gains from primary activities, and that would be from the sales of your products, or revenues from secondary activities. So did you make money on real estate? And gains from non-business activities. And then you have the expenses and losses, and that's primary activities, secondary, and loss from sales of other things. And this is, you take all the pluses and you subtract all the minuses, and if it's plus, you're okay. And if it's minus, then you gotta think about that.
file bankruptcy.
And normally these things are reported on a quarterly basis,
Right.
and not uncommon for a company to have a quarter where losses exceed the gains.
Right.
But if that goes on over time, then you're talking about other actions. Yes. Yeah, the cash flow, and this measures the same kinds of things coming in versus going out, but this is cash only. So they look at the cash. What's the value of the company in cash from operating activities, investing activities, and finance activities. And finally, we have the statement of shareholder equity. Remember, we talked about assets minus liabilities. That's what equity is. So the after you bring in all the pluses, take out all the minuses, whatever's left, that's what the value of the company is. That's what the owners actually own. And I think you have to think about this in how these things are all connected. So we have time period one, we'll say Q1 of 2026, and we have the balance sheet. What's the cash? What's the assets? What's the liabilities? And then whatever's left is the shareholder equity. Okay.
So, sorry, are salaries counted as part of liabilities? Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And so then you have those various reports that we showed. The cash flow, what's coming in, what's going out, and the income statement. What are you making on what's revenues and what is expenses, and that income statement goes into the the header called retained equities, sometimes called net income. But this is where you see, and this would be what you would be measuring the company over that period. And then it comes back, the owner's equity goes back into the shareholder equity there. And the change in cash, the cash flow statement comes in there. And you would have time period 2, which would be your balance sheet for the second quarter. And the changes would all be reflected in. So now we have a series of questions under finance. So anybody online or anybody in the room here, what is gross income? If it's real small, it's really gross, right? No,
That's total income, right?
pretty much. Yeah. Okay. That's total revenues before you take anything out.
Yep.
So that's your gross income. Now, how about the gross profit? Did I hit that?
That's your income subtracted with the liabilities. So it would be, or I'm sorry.
It's,
Money after taxes.
Okay.
The gross profit is, it's everything but before the deductions of cost, rent, and or salary. So you take out the production costs, but not some of the other things.
Right.
Okay. And then the net profit
Is the benefit?
well, okay, the net profit then is you take everything out. So you take
Is it?
your gross receipts, and then all of the expenses are taken out.
It's like a benefit.
It's like a benefit.
Yeah, it's a question.
I'm not quite sure what you mean by that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like after deduction of the gross income and gross profit, you have the net profit, right?
correct.
Mhm.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, that's what I'd like to know. Thank you.
Okay. Now, how about revenues?
I'm not a finance person. That's all I'm getting from this. Yeah.
Everybody is here. But revenue is important to me because I grew up on the sales side of the organization.
You can tell.
So this is the income that's realized from the sale of the company's goods.
Gotcha.
Okay, that's the revenues. And now here's one you really have to be a finance person to know this one. It's called EBIT. Okay.
One comment from someone I've only
Earning
heard top line
before
and bottom line revenues.
interest and taxes.
That is right. Wow. Whoa, I'm impressed. Yes. And this is a way that they compare companies in different industries. So they compare companies' profitabilities. It allows them to compare companies' profitabilities across different areas and reporting structures. Whoa, man, I'm impressed here. Oh, yeah, get it on there. Okay. And we have more. How about COGS? Anybody online?
Yep. I think we're getting to the new stuff we don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Is it
Okay.
the cost of goods sold?
There you go. See, we got some MBA candidates here, I think. Yeah. All right, it is cost of goods sold. So it excludes certain expenses, but it's generally the cost of what you are selling. All right, now how about gap? Okay, anybody online? Anybody there?
Not yet.
Okay. That is generally accepted accounting principles. So
Yeah.
these are the principles that are used in the reporting. Now, interestingly enough, these are used, GAAP is used in the United States. There is another measure that is global. And GAAP over the last 4 or 5 years have made some changes to close that gap, to make those things a little closer.
Yeah, this closing the gap. Okay.
Yeah, they're closing the gap. Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, so what is the regulating agency behind that?
Uh,
That standardizes
the
the.
SEC.
Okay, okay.
Mhm.
It's not the SEC. Or do you say SEC?
SEC.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah, the Securities Exchange.
Right, okay.
They're the ones that do this. Yeah, okay. Tell me the difference between a public company and a private company.
Anybody can be a shareholder in a public company.
Yeah, that's okay. Yep, that's it. Yep.
Well, it's
Right, and
the shares are traded in the open market, right?
Yeah, okay. And somebody was gonna say something online.
Yes, I'd like to. For me, public companies is a company. It is for government, right? If I understand, public companies, private is for yourself.
Yeah, kind of. All right. A public company is a company whose shares are traded on one of the global exchanges. Okay. Here in the US, it
Okay.
would be the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ.
Okay.
Oh, it's not S&P 500 or those private?
Well, S&P, the S&P 500 is a group of companies defined within the New York Stock
Oh.
Exchange.
Gotcha.
Okay, so it's
index
it's an index that they look.
Right, okay,
And companies come in and out of that all the time.
gotcha.
So, all right, but the public company shares traded on the local, one of the global stock exchanges. And a private company who has sole ownership by an individual or a group of individuals.
That's still Apple is the biggest one, right?
I'm sorry,
Apple is still the biggest private.
I believe so. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is not a public company. Yes. And again, you see the SEC, they
Yeah,
report those. And the reporting for a public company is much more strict than for a private company.
Mhm.
So,
What is private limited? PBT LTD.
okay, those are types of corporations that are private. So they are different kinds of, for example, my company, Connect Point, is an LLC, a limited liability corporation. And so there are other types of definitions like that define private companies. And that's generally a tax classification. Now, commercial. So here we go. Brand identity. Brand identity. Yeah. When we get to the commercial side, we're way away from where you guys are.
Maybe on the bench now.
Yeah. Okay. This is the outward expression of a product. This is what we see.
Yeah.
This is how we know a product.
There are a lot of technicalities to this though, right? Like,
Yeah.
in the sense that, like, if it's common enough, that product doesn't keep the IP and
There's
trademarks.
all kinds,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of ways. This is just a very general kind of definition.
Right, gotcha.
for it,
Okay.
So, yes. And now how about the brand image?
Is that the public relations aspect of?
Not
Brand.
public relations. Okay.
It's how the customers are perceiving the product for years together.
Absolutely. How the customer sees the product.
Mhm.
Yep. So, for example, if I say Volvo, what do you think of?
Not made in Sweden.
Well, okay.
I'm kidding.
So what do you think of? What's Volvo advertised all the time?
Someone said silver sedan.
Oh, well, yeah, it's my dad's car, right? Yeah. Yeah. All right, safety. They advertise safety. All right.
Point
So that's,
harness. Yeah.
all right, so that's an example there of what you would think. Now, how about market share?
How much of the market they own?
Correct. And that's either how much a company has or how much a individual product has. And interestingly enough, the pharmaceutical industry is really an anomaly among industries because in many industries, it's common that the market leader will have 30 or 40% of the market share. In the pharmaceutical industry, the highest we have is about 6 or 7%.
Okay, is that actually true? Because I know like companies like Thermo and Merck buy out all of these other companies and they do this whole hierarchy deal. So is that counting that?
That does count that.
Okay.
That does count that. Now, if you look at individual market segments, you will see products that have higher shares in there
Gotcha.
than that. But if you look at just across the board, the highest market share we have is about 7%.
Hmm.
And how about share of voice? This is really a marketing term. Share of voice.
Visibility of the company.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Okay. That is the percentage of advertising activities.
Hmm.
When I think of share of voice, I think of beer. Right? If you watch any sporting event, you will see the beer advertisements, right?
Yep.
And they're trying to establish share of voice.
Oh.
Okay. We have one more here. Segmentation.
I think I've only heard it in terms of like customer segmentation. So like you determine what, like where a particular product, like what type of customers it will appeal to.
Okay, now how do I?
Go through computers over here. There we go.
Okay, so segmentation. That's
The mouse no longer works. You have to just use the laptop. Yep.
okay. So that's dividing the market into segments, groups. Okay.
Sorry, so what I was gonna ask is members in this context, are they companies or what is members?
It could be anything. Okay. Think of this in terms of marketing. So these would be customer groups.
Oh, I see.
Okay, groups of
Or-
customers.
Gotcha.
Okay. So then if we divide this market up into groups or segments, what would targeting be?
The people you're catering to, right? So it'd be the,
Those are the people that you want to go after.
Yeah.
Okay. So based on your product attributes and what that group wants, that would be how you would select which group to go to. And then positioning.
is that how you pitch your product?
Okay. Yep. Pretty much. Yep. Yep. Okay. Here. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Okay. That's the strategy you would use to go after that targeted group. Okay.
So, wouldn't you want to appeal to the broadest audience of your product possible?
Sure.
So then how does segmentation help if you're trying to really focus on?
That would be, you might try to appeal to multiple segments.
Oh, you just aggregate them.
So
Okay.
yes, so you would be, it would be you would use multiple segments and then you would define your strategy around those segments. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
There you go.
All right, just some resources for you. The books, the career opportunities in biotech and drug development. That's my Bible. That's a very good overview of all the positions out there in industry. It's good to take a look at that because you'll probably find things that you might like that you'd had no idea existed. One of our other programs, certainly you can tune in when they're there, when they are on. If you happen to miss one, they're also available on our YouTube channel. You can go there and find it. The careers blog is very good. There's a number of different articles that can help you. And make an appointment with me or one of our other counselors. It's to help you kind of sort your way through this maze of things. And so with that, I will stop and ask if there's any questions.
So I have a question real quick. So last time I was here, I know there's a discussion on whether there would be that alumni resource available.
The NIH alumni database.
Still in
Yeah.
progress.
Okay.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
That's
It's
the speed
coming.
that things move in the government, but yes,
Yeah.
it's coming. It is not
Gotcha.
here yet.
Yes.
Okay.
And one thing, most of the schools have them as well.
Yeah.
So if you really want to go back to your university, your PhD university, or even your undergraduate university, and
Yeah, they're usually local to that region.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay. Other questions?
What are VC rounds and IPOs?
What was the first one?
VC rounds.
VC rounds. Okay. That's the number of times a venture capital firm will invest in a company. Right. And then an IPO, and thank you for bringing that up. I should have I should have defined that. That's an initial public offering. That is the process that a private company goes through to become public.
Should you research the organizational structure prior to accepting a position at a company? And if so, what are some factors you should consider?
It's not worth doing a big analysis of it. What you'll want to do is look at, are there a number of unfilled positions in the company? That can be a red flag. And is the company in a hiring process? Are they growing, or are they going the other way? So things like that, I think, are worth looking at. A real analysis of the company is probably not necessary. I mean, this is designed for when the company, for when you're talking to somebody in the company and he says, our CSO wants to do this, you kind of know where that position is.
Speaking of CSO and more acronyms, what is a CSO?
Chief Scientific Officer.
Mhm.
This is a common position within, certainly within the biosciences organization. This is the individual who is in charge of the research and development activities of the company.
How about a CRO?
A CRO, that's a clinical research organization. These are individual companies that generally will contract with companies in the biosciences industry to run the trials, either the preclinical or the clinical trials.
What are the ICH guidelines for?
ICH. You gotta help me here. I don't
Yeah,
know what
Tanishka, do you remember where we said ICH guidelines?
No, actually, I was just curious when we were discussing like who regulates the GMP requirements for
Nope, unfortunately, I
companies.
think we cannot hear you at the moment, so you may have to type it in the chat. Thanks for all your patience online, everyone as well. We had to literally switch computers mid-talk. It was related to GMP regulations.
So GMP.
International Conference on Harmonization from the FDA.
Okay.
Oh, okay, okay. So that must be a program to try to standardize some of the GMP.
Recommendations on information that should be included in core clinical study reports
Okay,
is what it says.
thank you for that, because you
Yeah.
got one that I did not
Mhm.
know.
Yeah, related to GMP regulations. Back to Q&A. As a scientist within a company, how much business language comes up on a day-to-day basis?
You know, as an employee of a company, and I'm just going to make it more general than a scientist, it probably comes up almost constantly. But as an employee in the company, you know that this stuff,
Mhm.
all right? So it may take you a couple of months to get into the jargon, but you'll know this stuff.
Educational resources for those of us who are totally unfamiliar with business and finance structures, but are interested in learning more. So people who want to learn more on this topic, where do you go? Right here.
Go to business school.
Go to the slide. Yeah, business school. Think about it all the time.
And interestingly enough, I was a biochemistry undergraduate,
Mhm.
and I have my MBA, and that was the first finance and finance courses I ever had at the graduate level. And if I can do it, I'm sure you can do it.
Regarding analytical development, this is a very specific question. Is there a different work style between CDMO and CRO?
You know, a CRO is a contract research organization.
Mhm.
A CDMO is a contract manufacturing organization. And so they are both contracting with companies to do a specific function. One does research, one does manufacturing.
There's another question in here that is a frequent one, but important to revisit. When you're applying for industry positions, if it has like senior in the title of the job description, does postdoc experience transfer to that like description of experience needed, or are they measuring just time and experience within industry?
Yeah. Pay no attention to that.
Mhm.
That's the bottom line. You know, normally your postdoc will provide you with the background you need to get into one of those positions in the research or preclinical development areas.
Mhm.
So yes, look at the skills, the skills and the job responsibilities. And if you have those, yes, apply for it. And you know, and I should say, one of the common things that I get asked all the time is it will say 6 years industry experience in. Okay. Pay no attention to that either.
Mhm.
Okay, if you have 6 years of doing that, you're gonna qualify for that. They don't care, they don't really care where you get them.
Yeah, they want 6 years of experience in, immunology and flow cytometry and similar assays, and you've done that in grad school and postdoc. Fantastic. You have that experience doing those
Yeah.
assays.
Yeah, don't sell yourself short.
I think that is all the questions I see online. Yeah, that is all the questions for now.
All right, then this
Mouse
is,
is working again.
this
Yeah,
is the exciting part.
Gotta use the
Oh,
trackpad. Yep.
okay, yeah. I now can present to you the MBA.
That was the end.
The
Okay.
MBA, Mastery of Brad's Answers.
Wow.
So, and let me say, thank you for playing along with me on this.
Got several applause and laugh reactions online. Fantastic. I think is the end of what we have for today. Thank you all for joining us online. We have one hand raised.
Yeah, you
Oh,
took-
went away. I think that's all. We will
Okay.
be sharing the slides and the recording afterwards. If we're really fancy, we'll even cut out the few minutes in the middle while we were switching computers. So you won't have to deal with that in the recording. That is all for today. If you have any questions, absolutely reach out to us afterwards. Those of you at NIH, you can always book a one-on-one advising appointment with Brad or any of our other career counselors through our website. Highly encourage you to take advantage of that as you're going through your own career prep. With that, I hope everyone has a fantastic afternoon. Get outside. It is beautiful out there in the Maryland area. We will see you all next time.
Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.
And thank you for
Oh, yeah.
coming here.